Freeze frame. That's me, the guy standing between a crazed HOA president and my prize-winning bull, Maximus, who at that moment was just chewing grass. The lady with the rifle? That's Karen. And this is the day she made the worst decision of her life. But before we get to the rifle, sewage sabotage, and a viral Facebook revolt, let me take you back. Because the truth is, Karen didn't just pick a fight with a man, she picked a fight with a rancher, a neighbor, and a bull who doesn't back down. I live on a decent chunk of land just outside city limits. Not some grand plantation, just a few peaceful acres to myself. It's enough room to let Maximus roam, to raise a few animals, grow what I want to eat, and enjoy the quiet hum of the countryside. And for a while, that's all it was, quiet. No drama, no politics, no HOA. Or so I thought. Enter Karen. I should have known something was off the moment she moved in. She had that look, a permanent frown that seemed surgically attached to her face, paired with a clipboard she carried like a badge of honor. A few weeks in, she introduced herself at my fence line like she was running for mayor. Only there was no election. Just rules. Her rules. Hi there. I'm Karen, president of the neighborhood HOA. Just wanted to remind you that unkempt grass is considered a violation. Violation of what? I asked, leaning on my shovel. Of the community aesthetic. We have a standard to uphold. Lady, you're about 50 yards from my property line and about 5 miles from reality. She didn't laugh. I did. At first, it was petty stuff. Letters taped to my door about my improper mailbox. It's a metal box on a post, who cares? Warnings about my fence being an inch too tall. Grievances about my vegetable garden. And the best part? I wasn't even part of the HOA. Yep. My land predates the development. Meaning I was grandfathered out. Legally speaking, they had no jurisdiction over me. But that didn't stop Karen. No. Karen operated on pure entitlement. Facts just slowed her down. So I ignored her. That was mistake number 1, ignoring the storm instead of bracing for it. Let me pause right here and make something clear. If you've never dealt with an HOA Karen, let me describe the breed. They're not satisfied with peace, they crave order. Not the helpful kind, either. It's the kind of order where you mow your lawn a certain way because they said so. They quote bylaws like scripture, file complaints like it's a sport. And they love to hold fake authority over people who refuse to bend the knee. Now mix that attitude with rural stubbornness and a prize bull with no respect for boundaries. And what you get is war. I noticed it first when I was checking my irrigation lines. The water levels in my well were dropping faster than usual, too fast. At first, I figured it was a leak. But then I saw her garden. Her azaleas were exploding with color. The lawn? Greener than mine. She'd even installed a fancy sprinkler system. Something didn't sit right. So I traced the piping from my well. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't smart. It was literally an illegal hookup snaking under the fence into her flower bed like a thief in the night. She was stealing my water. My private well. And she didn't even try to hide it. Now, here's where most folks would call the sheriff or file a complaint. But I wasn't most folks. I believe in teaching people lessons they won't forget. So instead of cutting her off quietly, I rerouted the line through a septic tank overflow valve. Just a little trickle, enough to ruin her garden slowly. The kind of subtle, creeping chaos that makes you question reality. Must be the soil, I imagined her saying. Digging through her rotting roses. Maybe it's the pH levels. Her HOA buddies might whisper. Or maybe, I grinned to myself, it's karma. In liquid form. She never figured it out. Not then. Anyway. But sewage was just the beginning. The day she pointed a rifle at Maximus. That's the day the whole neighborhood turned on her, and I made sure of it. Let me ask you something. What would you do if someone stole your water? Not metaphorically. I mean literally tapped into your private well. Like you're some municipal utility and she's entitled to the flow. Because that's exactly what Karen did. And no, She didn't ask. No. It wasn't an accident. And yes, I found out. But instead of calling the cops, I got creative. Let's just say, her flowers never bloomed the same again. It started with the flowers. Now, I'm not the gardening type. I grow crops, not roses. But I know what a well-fed garden looks like, and what it shouldn't look like during a drought. Everyone else's lawns were turning brown. Even my tomato vines were starting to droop. But Karen, her front yard looked like Eden. Bright, vibrant, freshly watered every morning like clockwork. You could practically smell the smugness from across the fence line. At first, I chalked it up to vanity. Maybe she was hauling water in. Maybe she had some fancy rain-catching contraption. But then I noticed the pressure in my well pump. It had been fluctuating strangely. Some days the tank would refill slower than others. I'd walk by the valve at night and hear a faint hiss, barely audible, but definitely there. I trusted my gut. And my gut said, someone's stealing my water. So one Sunday morning, while Karen was at her Community Beautification Committee brunch, yes, that's a real thing, I did some digging. Literally, I followed the pipe that ran from my well, then branched off near the old irrigation trench. And lo and behold, there it was, a PVC splitter rigged like some DIY disaster, snaking right through the property line and vanishing under Karen's fence. Sloppy, bold, and completely illegal. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. Crouching over the muddy junction, I stared at it for a moment, amazed by the audacity. She wasn't just nosy, she was a thief. Now, most folks would grab a wrench and shut it off, or call the authorities, or send a cease and desist. But I'm not most folks. And Karen? She needed to learn the kind of lesson that sticks. Here's where my background came in handy. Back in college, I studied agricultural engineering for a bit. Long enough to understand pressure flow systems, siphoning tricks, and what happens when you reroute a line from a wastewater tank instead of a freshwater one. So I rigged up a minor modification. I installed a hidden bypass near the output valve, one that would divert a portion of our old grey water reserve into the stolen line. Not raw sewage, mind you. I'm not trying to cause a chemical spill. Just enough organic matter to make things unpleasant. The next few days were glorious. Her grass turned patchy. The rose bushes wilted. That fancy sprinkler system? It started spraying sludge. At one point, I saw her out there in yoga pants and gardening gloves, crying over a hydrangea like it was a fallen soldier. Why is everything dying? I heard her scream one morning. Her husband, who always looked like he was one passive-aggressive comment from moving out, replied, maybe God's trying to tell you something. I'm not saying sabotage is always the answer, but sometimes, poetic justice doesn't come in a courtroom, it comes through PVC pipes and compost runoff. What Karen did wasn't just rude. It was theft. Violation of boundaries, literal and personal. And she didn't even notice the irony. The same woman who ranted about HOA bylaws and community rules was trespassing on my private utility. She thought she was above the law. I just made sure the soil knew better. So never mess with a man's land. Never assume people won't notice when you take what isn't yours. And above all, if your enemy knows how to dig trenches and reroute pressure systems, maybe don't provoke them. Karen never found out what happened. At least, not yet. Because this wasn't the climax. This was just round 2. There's a certain type of silence that happens when someone points a rifle at something you love. It's not quiet. It's heavy. Like the whole world holds its breath. That's exactly what happened when Karen, clipboard queen turned wannabe sniper, stormed onto my property screaming about property damage and pointed a loaded rifle straight at Maximus. And that, my friends, is the moment this ridiculous HOA feud became something far more dangerous. Let's rewind just a bit. Maximus, my 1.500 pound showball, is a gentle giant. The kind of animal that toddlers feed carrots to through the fence. He's never charged at anyone. never caused a single issue, unless you count chewing grass a felony. But to Karen, Maximus represented everything she hated about me: freedom, non-compliance, and most importantly, something she couldn't control. A few days after her garden turned into a swampy nightmare, wonder why? Karen, she saw Maximus grazing near the edge of her lawn. Not even on it. Mind you. Just close enough for her to lose it. I got the call from a neighbor. You better get out here. Karen's in your field screaming about your bull eating her flowers. And I think she has a gun. I dropped everything and ran. When I got there, I saw her. Karen. Red-faced. Shaking. Holding a hunting rifle like she was Sarah Connor in a sundress. Maximus. He was just chewing, blissfully unaware that he was moments away from being turned into a headline. Get your damn bull off my lawn, she screamed, finger twitching near the trigger. Karen, I said. Hands up. Trying to stay calm. You're standing on my property. He's not even on yours. He's causing damage. I have rights, she snapped. Rights, lady? You broke into my water supply and I let that slide. But this was the line. You're about to commit a felony, I said flatly. You shoot that bull, and you're going to jail. Period. I'm protecting my property, she shouted. He was chewing my lilies. It would have been comical if it weren't so terrifying. Maximus took a few steps back, sensing the tension. His massive head turned toward her. Curious. One wrong move. And this could have gone very, very wrong. And then Salvation came walking across the field in a pair of old boots and a fishing hat. Carl. Now Carl is a man of few words. Retired cop. Lives 2 houses down. Minded his business, until that day. Karen. Put the gun down, he said firmly, walking toward us like it was just another Tuesday. This is none of your business, she snapped. You're on his property, pointing a firearm at his livestock. That makes it my business. Carl replied. Put the gun down. And for the first time since I met Karen, she hesitated. You could see the wheels turning in her head. Her HOA fantasies crashing headfirst into the reality of criminal charges. She wasn't used to people standing up to her. But Carl? Carl had seen people like her before. And he wasn't afraid. She finally lowered the rifle, trembling with rage. But something else too. Fear. That day could have ended with blood. Instead, it ended with a standoff, a retreat, and a promise, to myself, that I wasn't letting this go. You don't point a gun at someone's family and walk away like nothing happened. Not in my town. Not on my land. Karen had just escalated things beyond the petty. Beyond HOA letters and fake fines. She'd made it personal. You ever see a tyrant lose her throne? Not with swords. Not with torches and pitchforks. But with screenshots. A Facebook post. And a neighborhood full of fed-up folks who'd finally had enough, because that's exactly what happened to Karen. After she pointed a rifle at Maximus, I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to end in a courtroom. It was going to end in the town square, figuratively speaking. And I was going to bring her down with the one thing HOA bullies fear most: the truth. I started that night. I sat down with Carl, the retired cop who stopped Karen from doing something she'd regret for the rest of her life. He brought over a folder of documents and a six-pack like we were prepping for war. And in a way, we were. She's been breaking HOA protocol for years, Carl muttered, flipping through bylaws that read more like a medieval rule book. Problem is, no one's challenged her. Until now. I laid out everything I had. Photographs of her illegal tap into my well. Audio clips of her screaming at Maximus. Copies of HOA warnings she sent, none of which were legally enforceable on my property. And of course, testimonies from neighbors who'd been slapped with fines for everything from wind chimes to mailbox paint color. We weren't just building a case. We were building a movement. Then I made the post. I didn't use her name. I didn't have to. I wrote about the abuse of power, the harassment, the illegal use of utilities. And the moment that pushed things over the edge, a woman, armed, threatening a peaceful animal on private land. This isn't about a ball. This is about control. About someone using fear and fake authority to rule a neighborhood like a fiefdom. I attached photos, nothing invasive. Just enough to make the situation real. And I hit post. At first. Silence. A few likes. A heart emoji. Then. The comments started rolling in. Wait. This happened to us too. She fined us $250 for leaving our trash can out 20 minutes too long. I was told I couldn't plant sunflowers because they weren't community appropriate. She walked into our backyard to measure our fence without permission. By midnight, the post had been shared over 80 times within the neighborhood group. The HOA board tried to delete it. That just made it worse. People started reposting it outside the group. Screenshots went around like wildfire. Karen had ruled by silence and intimidation. But now? The silence was broken. The neighborhood was awake. Let me tell you something I've learned through all this. HOAs don't thrive because of rules. They thrive because people are afraid to speak. Afraid of fines. Of gossip. Of retaliation. But the moment one person says enough and means it, the whole house of cards starts to shake. Karen had bullied this community for years. She hid behind bureaucracy and aesthetic standards. But what she really wanted was obedience. And that night, she lost it all. The next morning, she came to my doorstep. Not alone. She brought the entire HOA board with her, clipboard brigade in full formation. You'd think they were marching into battle. But me? I just sipped my coffee and waited. You've gone too far, Karen snapped. You're ruining this community. No, I said. You did that a long time ago. I'm just finally letting people see it. This is defamation, she hissed. Then sue me. I shrugged. But you better bring a lawyer who can explain why you tapped into my well and pulled a gun on a farm animal. She froze. Even her board members looked uncomfortable. One of them, a nervous guy with thick glasses and zero backbone, actually stepped back a little. The tides were turning. Karen thought power came from rules. But power comes from people. And when enough people realize they don't have to live in fear, no HOA charter in the world can save someone like her. There she was, standing on the curb, suitcase in hand. No HOA clipboard in sight, just a hollow stare and the bitter silence of defeat. Karen was leaving. No farewell party. No crowd waving goodbye. Just the wind, the gravel, and a community that had finally found peace. And standing at the top of my pasture, like some silent guardian of justice, was Maximus, chewing grass. Watching her go. Poetic. Really. After that Facebook post went viral and neighbors started speaking out, everything moved fast. The HOA board, once Karen's loyal inner circle, started jumping ship. One by one. They realized the political cost of sticking by her. People started attending meetings for the first time. They demanded transparency, accountability, and most of all, consequences. Carl and I had built an airtight case. We weren't just working with angry neighbors now, we had legal footing. The biggest blow? A cease and desist letter from my attorney, outlining the illegal well tapping, the firearm incident, and the fake fines she issued outside her jurisdiction. Karen wasn't just facing social backlash, she was looking down the barrel of real legal heat. Suddenly, the HOA was very interested in damage control. 2 weeks later, they issued a public apology. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was lawyer-approved, polished, and as dry as a saltine cracker. But it did the job. We, the HOA board of Sycamore Ridge, acknowledge that recent actions by board leadership may have exceeded the boundaries of authority. We apologize to Mr. T for any undue stress, financial burden, or property interference. That's lawyer speak for. You were right. She messed up. Please don't sue us into the Stone Age. They also dropped all HOA-related fines against me. Not that they were enforceable in the first place, but now it was official. And Karen? She didn't even show up to the meeting where the apology was read. she'd gone quiet, real quiet. It's funny how quickly power fades when people stop fearing you. Karen used to walk the sidewalks like she owned them, stopping people, correcting them, warning them about bylaws like some budget-grade neighborhood cop. Now, folks wouldn't even make eye contact. Her closest allies avoided her. People whispered when she walked by. Her garden, the same one she stole my water for, had withered into a muddy, abandoned plot. No one offered to help. She tried to hang on. For a week. Then 2. And finally, she packed up and left. No warning. No notice. Just gone. After Karen left, something amazing happened. Maximus, the very bull she once called a threat to property value, became a neighborhood icon. People brought their kids to see him. One neighbor even painted a mural of him on her shed. Maximus the Just. I'm not even joking. And me? I finally got my peace back. No more fake citations. No more passive-aggressive letters. Just open skies, green pastures, and a community that finally remembered how to smile. So if you ever find yourself dealing with a Karen in your HOA, remember, you don't need to shout. You need the truth. And maybe a bull named Maximus. Like, share, and comment below if you've ever had to stand your ground against an out-of-control HOA. And don't forget to subscribe to Hoa Karen Stories for more epic neighborhood showdowns, poetic justice, and stories that prove the quiet ones we fight back best.